Thank you for coming to listen to my design process of my exhibition presentation. Today we're going to be looking at my Ablaze tag display exhibition and walking through how I've created that from start to finish. A little bit about myself and my work is my name is Noah Eisenberger. I'm a senior at UWF, and I'm mostly a comic artist. I've been creating comic for the past 3 or 4 years and have slowly been honing my skills through that in both art and design. And so for this synthesis exhibition, that's kind of what I wanted to focus on. And the Synthesis Group BFA Exit Show being an annual senior exit show for seniors to show off their works. And so for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to walk you through my process of brainstorming, researching, sketching, developing, revising, and then finally finalizing the design for sending it off to print and then showing it off in the gallery exhibition. A little background of exactly what this exhibition is that it's for artists and designers, though it's primarily for BFA students. This year, it actually had both a mix of art and design together. And so there's very little limitations or guidelines. And so it was really the sky's the limit of what we were to do. At first, I was actually under the impression that it was only graphic design, really. And so I was put initially in a BFA only class. I was a little hesitant going into it as I'm not a BFA major. I'm going for a Bachelor of Arts. However, the chair of the department, who I've been working with closely for a couple years now, was confident that I'd still do well in the class and that my comic, being both a fusion of art and design, would still fit well amongst all the other designers. And so starting around mid-January, we were tasked to start brainstorming what exactly our projects would look like, and we had until about mid-April to finish the design, so about 4 months. My initial idea direction was to create a piece that was to promote my comic. Our only guideline really was it was to promote a product, a deliverable of some sort. And so my deliverable would be my comic. And so I wanted to develop a sort of grand display around that, and I sort of settled on a wall display. As I was looking at some different manga authors and how they went about displaying their comics or their manga alongside their like bigger artworks they made for those pieces for the exhibitions, it kind of caught my eye to start with that sort of idea. I then thought of a little bit more specifically of what my story needed in the context of this. And so, as I was wanting to display my final chapter for people to scroll through, and so that was a deliverable. And so I wanted the overall large graphic on the wall to lead the eye into that, give context, attract the reader. I do a lot of different things. And so I thought that a collage, a dynamic, strong collage, would do the trick. And so I started quickly researching different kinds of collages and styles, and I eventually settled on a collage style that included lots of panels that led the eye well. Then from not only just within the compositions of each image next to each other, but the panels, like the way it's cropped and the borders, lead the eye. And so, not being much of a graphic designer, and especially never doing a collage before, I kind of felt like I was going in a little bit of the deep end out of my territory. And so I just started with the only way I knew how, was looking at artists better than me and trying to copy their style and figure out what made those work. I wanted to use some of the highlights of my series, the best moments, most emotional, impactful, beautiful moments, and I wanted to feature those all together to make something that's very attractive and would all come together to give context and make the reader want to scroll through the screen that would have the final chapter on display. So now that I got the general idea of how I wanted the layout to be conceptually, now I started to play with actually creating this harmonious whole of what I was trying to do. And I was trying to balance a lot of different things. I wanted it to be dynamic. I wanted all the panels to ultimately point to the screen in the center. I wanted the images to look well next to each other and be cropped according to the way it fits the context of their particular scenes. And I also wanted larger images for the more important scenes and smaller images for just less important scenes to kind of give a little more weight to the stronger scenes. I was actually having to do a little bit more research at this point, trying to understand different design concepts. The biggest of them being this level of hierarchy of having these stronger, bigger pieces being the ones that would catch the eye first, and then that would later guide the eye towards where you would want the reader to look. As you can see with these images here, I started from the top left of having the images kind of out from each other, trying to figure out really where I wanted to put them next to each other, and to being more comfortable with how they should be displayed, how they should be cropped, where they should be next to each other, and the different colors and themes of the images in relationship to one another and to the piece overall. After a lot of experimenting, I finally settled on a rough draft that I thought fit very well with meeting all the criteria. I got my professor's feedback as well as many of the other students in my class. They all said they loved it. And so at this point, I was ready to start heading to print. However, something unforeseen to me was in the form of, again, the chair of the art department, my friend who's been keeping up with the story for such a long time. When I showed this to him, he was actually disappointed. And he told me why, and it was something I had not considered, was that it was not reflective really of the nature of my story. And while the panels were interesting, they were full of life and energy and plenty of dynamism and movement, it didn't really reflect the weight or the sincerity of the story and how the characters got to these moments, and especially how the reader, the audience, got to those moments. And so a little bit of context of what that means is the scrolling aspect of the webcomic that I work with is vertical, and so that's the way the story tells. And my professor told me not only was it one of the most unique things he's seen for a comic style, but it was also one of my strongest suits that he loved the most, and it made him believe that was a huge essence of where my storytelling really shone. And so that's what he wanted to see in my piece, in which these images, all fragmented and squished together, couldn't tell. And so, while I was very appreciative of the feedback, and it is what I needed, I was also very confused and lost, going back to the drawing board, and with very much less time at this point. And so now I was repeating the brainstorming, the researching, sketching, and conceptualizing, trying to understand what the story Ablaze really was and what it needed. And so I was trying to find my footing through experimenting with a bunch of different ideas. Still, only pretty much knowing that I wanted a bigger wall display that guided the eye to this scrollable final chapter, but still very confused of how I should go about getting there. And so I was getting a lot of feedback from a lot of different teachers, but ultimately it all kind of pulled me in different directions that confused me even more and made me more unsure of where I needed to go. So I had to take a step back from everything and kind of just focus on just my story and really understand what it needed and what I wanted to give it for this proper send off, this finale, this final chapter. And so, as I was kind of exploring more images online, I came across one of my favorite manga authors, the author of Vagabond, a very popular and beautiful manga series. And he was also an artist who specializes in creating large wall displays. And so after looking at those and kind of understanding how those had an impact on me and how it related to his story, it kind of helped me understand the way in which my own wall graphic would relate to my story. And so it was at this point I was much more sure of the direction I wanted to go. And there at the bottom right, the Ablaze finale image, that was what I wanted to take it in. A grand, beautiful image, conceptually at this point, that I wanted to really show in a deeper way of what Ablaze meant. And so, after a lot of sketching of using this general composition, trying to find the style I wanted to go in, and showing those longer panels that would act as sort of context slash memories within his flowing cape there, I finally settled on working with my regular style that I've been using for Ablaze all this time, but just working it to be as beautiful as I could possibly make it. And so with the design finalized and all the criteria met, I believed I was finally finished with the design. I had my grand, beautiful artwork. I had the context of the panels in his cape, and I had sort of created this space that led the eye to this final chapter for people to scroll through. With a lot of positive feedback, it was sent off to print, and with the help of another professor of mine, we had it installed. We had the screen installed with the final chapter being able to be scrolled through, and with a few more minor additions that I later I didn't consider initially, such as QR codes for people to be able to read it sort of on the go, as it was a longer chapter, as well as having a link to the rest of my chapters, as well as scroll indicator. With all those little minor tweaks, it was finally finished. With everything finalized, the exhibition opened, and though at first I was not expecting much care or attention for it, my professor later told me after the event had ended for the opening that it was one of the most interacted with pieces of the entire exhibition, much to my surprise. And so overall, I'm not a graphic designer. I went into this with very little idea of what exactly I was doing. Even though I was doing a lot of research and trying to understand what I was doing, it felt like I was winging it a lot. But with my professors and a lot of research and studying, and definitely a lot of time experimenting, I was able to settle on something that actually hit at the core, at the soul of what Ablaze was. And while I was a little bit unsure of how the final product was, a lot of people read it. A lot of people talked to me about it, and it was very well received. And I was very thankful for that. And so with that, that concludes the design process. I thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best.